Today, I am thrilled to be unboxing and checking out the brand new Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. Now, based on what I've seen so far, this looks to be a multi-generational leap forward in every way. So I'm really excited to dig into this phone, as well as the Flip 7, which we'll look at in a separate video, and a bunch of accessories that I got for free with my order. But of course, in this video, we will be focusing on the Fold 7. I'll be unboxing the phone. I will also tell you everything that is new about the phone, and I'm even going to set it up and get it up and running so I can give you my live first impressions using the brand new Fold 7. So without further ado, let's get started. And as always, I will leave all the purchase links down in the description. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, with my order, I did get a few new freebies with the order. This is specific to the UK as I am based in London. With my Galaxy Z Fold 7, I got a free silicone case, which we'll check out towards the end. And then I also got a pair of Galaxy Buds 3 Pro, which are a very good set of in-ear headphones. So really good to have those with your very expensive Fold 7. And I guess that is where we can start. That is the price. So the price has now increased all the way up to what basically $2,000, $1,999, or here in the UK, it's going to be £1,799, which makes it $100 more compared to the previous Fold 6. We'll talk a little bit about how the two compare as we go, but first, let's unbox. So let's pull out the tabs here on the back, the most satisfying part of any unboxing, and then flip it over. Here we go. I really like, by the way, the very minimalistic sort of design silhouette here of the phone. Very clean. Let's lift it up. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And voila. Ooh, looking good. All right. Let's take a look here at the brand new Fold 7. Now, normally speaking, I will first check out the other accessories that come in the box, but today I can't wait. Let's dig straight into the Fold 7. And oh my God, look at how thin this is. That is amazing. See, this is exactly why I want to do an unboxing video of this phone in particular, because I wanted to share my live impressions of this unimaginably thin design, like crazy thin. In fact, I've got a few comparisons here that I want to quickly make. Check this out. This here is the Galaxy S25 Ultra, also of course a flagship and a new phone from Samsung, but look at that difference. That is crazy. That is actually, wow. Let me see the USB-C port. It's basically as thin as the USB-C port. Let me bring that up closer to the camera here so you guys can see. Look at that. The port is barely thicker than the phone itself. And here again is a comparison. Really, really amazing. So Samsung have clearly done a lot with the design, and that is of course one of the biggest highlights of this new Fold 7. That is this completely new redesign that is, well, much thinner. It is in fact 26% thinner. That is compared to the previous Fold 6, and folded, it should actually be not much thicker than a regular flagship, but we'll check that out in a second here. First, let's do the obligatory peel here on the main display. There we go. All right. Immediately, I can tell the crease is a lot less visible. I've got it up here on my second monitor so I can see what you guys are seeing in the overhead, and this is a huge difference. I can already tell you. I've used previously the Fold 6, the Fold 5, and even the Fold 4, so I'm very familiar with this form factor, and I've seen it improve over time. Already I can tell you this here is a huge difference. With the display off, which is when you would actually see the crease most, you can see here with this harsh reflection of my studio light, it's barely visible. This is a really big step forward. Looking promising so far. But we also have improvements brought to the outer display, which is now bigger. So let's go ahead and do the peel first here. There we go. So the outer display is now bigger. It's going to be a little bit taller and especially more wider. And that does make it feel and look a lot more like a typical smartphone, right? Again, let's go back to the S25 Ultra, I think a very comparable phone. And you can see here that the form factors, they're not that different. Now, the previous Fold phones, particularly if you probably recall, the outer display was really narrow. And while from one aspect that did make it comfortable to hold in the hand, because those phones were quite a bit thicker, it did mean that the screen was quite cramped, so the keyboard was quite squished together. But now, because the Fold 7 is so incredibly thin, gotta do one more comparison with the phone close. Check this out. Wow, it's basically as thin as the S25 Ultra. Really, really impressive so far here with what Samsung has managed to achieve here on the Fold 7. But because the phone is now thinner, they can make that outer display wider and making it feel and look much more like a typical smartphone, which I think is going to make this outer screen a lot better to use. And then over on the back, a big upgrade once again here with the brand new Fold 7 is going to be in the camera. So we now also get a 200 megapixel main camera sensor, just like we get on the S25 Ultra. Now the other cameras won't be the same as on the Ultra, but the main camera is of course the most important. And again, that you will find here on the Fold 7 here, meaning there's much less of a compromise in camera than there was in previous years. Now, one thing I did notice when looking at the very sleek profile of this phone, you can see that camera bump. It's big. It's big. It is a lot bigger than it is on other phones. Like again, here we have the Ultra. You can see it definitely sticks out a lot more. You get that sort of second layer there to where it sticks out. But honestly, I would rather have this than have the entire phone be thicker. So I think that's a worthy trade-off. And again, because you do get that 200 megapixel camera, means that the compromise there won't be as big, or really nothing compared to what it was in previous years. Now, before we boot up the phone, set it up, and I start using it, let's take a look at what else is included in the box here. Put that phone down here, and let's take a look at the second half. So over here, on the top, we're going to pull this out. It's probably going to be a similar story. This usually doesn't change much, but let's check it out nonetheless. So here we have your SIM ejector tool, and then in here we have the USB-C to USB-C cable. Looks like a 1 meter or a 3-foot cable. Very simple USB-C cable. And then we have your documentation, I believe. There it is. But how do we get to it? That is, there it is. And here we have your quick start guide, warranty information, and some energy things. Of course, no stickers. We never get stickers, but might be a nice touch for the future. All right, let's go ahead now and boot up the phone for the first time. We also have that very thin fingerprint sensor on the side. Impressive that they still managed to fit this in a design this slim. Let's go ahead and press and hold that power button and boot up the phone. And while we wait, I'd love to hear from you. Is this actually going to be your first folding phone, or have you upgraded from a previous Fold to the Fold 7? I'd love to hear your experience with folding phones so far. And if you are enjoying this video, of course, a sub to the channel would be amazing. And also leave a like. It really helps support the channel and also lets you see more content like this in the future. Good, so I'm gonna go ahead and wait for this phone to boot up. I'm gonna set it up, restore the data from my S25 Ultra, and then we're gonna check back in and take a look at this Fold 7 once it is fully brought to life. I'll be right back. And ladies and gentlemen, we are back. The Fold 7 is now properly set up and ready to go. Let's take a look and check out this phone in more detail. So right off the bat, I just want to do another quick size comparison here in terms of the thickness with a closer up camera angle this time, comparing it here in this case to the Galaxy S25 Ultra. And you can see that if you exclude the camera bump, it's basically as slim as the Ultra, which is really, really great and gives you a completely different feel in the hand. I've got to say, I can't really put into words how big of a difference this is compared to previous folding phones, but it makes really all the difference. When I hold this phone in my hand, it doesn't feel like a fold. It really just feels like any relatively large flagship phone, and that's exactly what it is in terms of its proportions. You got a nice large screen here on the outside. Again, that super slim design. Really thin hinge with a nice little Samsung logo there. I really like the way they did that. Very subtle. And then here on the back, looking at that camera bump, which is big. I will say that. As you can see, if it's on a table, the wobble is real. It definitely moves a lot more than any other phone. But again, I'd rather have a larger camera bump than have the entire phone be thicker. So I think they chose the right thing there in terms of compromise. And then of course, the star of the show, unfolding the phone. Check out that now 8-inch display, super large, really, really great. And again, I just want to show you one more time that crease, which looks so much better compared to before. The same, by the way, can be said for the new Flip 7, which I'm also currently transferring the data on. I've also done an unboxing video on that, so be sure to check that out after this video. But on the Fold here, the crease really is a game changer, and it makes all the difference when viewing your content, especially outside or like in a bright environment like this. Now, having played with the Fold 7 for a little bit now, one thing I've also really noticed is that it's quite light in the hand. In fact, it weighs just 215 grams, which makes it lighter than, for example, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which is my current daily Apple phone. And then I pair that with the S25 Ultra, which too is heavier than the Fold 7. So that just goes to show how light this phone is, especially considering it really is, of course, a phone and a tablet in one. And then here we have the outer display, and I just wanted to pull this up here here on the keyboard to show you how much easier it is and more comfortable it is to type here on the new Fold 7. Now this is of course thanks to the fact that it is going to be wider, so your keys won't be as squished together, and the aspect ratio too is going to be much more like, say, a traditional phone, so apps are going to look even better, and also videos, particularly in landscape mode, will look great here as well. But of course, if you are going to be watching videos, you're going to want to use that main super wide and big 8-inch display. And just using this phone right away on the home screen, you can see that we essentially have 2 pages on one. So on my S25 Ultra, which is where I copied the data from, this would be the first page, and then the second page here with these widgets would be the second page of my home screen. But here, of course, because we get that wide display here, we get both on one, and it looks so good. And we can swipe to the right here to see your news. Oh, I know that guy. And we can go back to the app drawer, look at all of your applications, super easy to go through. And of course, because this display is so large, it makes it exceptionally great for things like multitasking. So let me give you a quick view here of that. So let's open up, here we have the Play Store, and we can kind of swipe up slightly to bring up the dock, and then we can bring in any other application to the side here. Let's pull up YouTube, and we can even bring in, oh, hold on, let me go back, even bring in a third application. Let's say the calendar right there. Simply drag, and you can see very easily I can drop that into place wherever I like. Now we got 3 apps running, and then we can add one more, and that would be the calculator, which is kind of an app we can drag over top and move around. There's not many phones where you can have 3 apps running at the same time. And bear in mind that particularly here, if you're running, let's say, 2 apps at once, so let's go ahead, for example, here and close the calendar. These are 2 full screen smartphone apps, right? So what you see here on the left is exactly how the Play Store would look on a typical smartphone, and the same thing goes for the YouTube app. So this really is I'd say the pure, or the ultimate form of multitasking on Android on a smartphone. Now, throughout this video, I've talked a lot about the many positives to share with the Fold 7, and there are really many, as you can see, but there is one downside that I do want to mention, and that I think will be important to some of you, and that is the fact that the Fold 7 no longer supports the Galaxy S Pen. Now, of course, the Fold, unlike the Ultra, never comes with an S Pen included. However, I know some people do like to pair it with the Fold. It really is kind of a natural combo, having a tablet-sized phone, great for sketching something down, even making a drawing or something, but unfortunately, the S Pen is no longer going to be supported on the Fold 7. Now, Samsung said that this was needed to make the display as thin as it is, and ultimately make the phone as thin as it is. So once again, it is a bit of a trade-off there, but I think for most people, it's probably not going to be too big of a deal, but I know for some, it will be a bit of a letdown. Right, now I want to take a look at the camera. So one thing you will notice here on the inner display, for the first time, we actually have a visible camera cutout, a punch hole camera, where on the previous Fold phones, they use an underscreen camera, which when you're using the display, of course, looks great because you can barely see it there. It was never invisible, but you could barely see it there under the display, where now it is, well, just about as obvious as it is on any other Galaxy phone. But what this should result in is in a better quality camera. So let's pull up the camera app here, and let's take a quick selfie. There we go, and let's preview that selfie right away and take a look. Here it is, so let's have a look here. Looks pretty good, honestly. I think it actually looked a little bit better once I took the photo and pulled it up. That's probably some of that AI image action going on there after you take it to help process it and make it a little bit better. Let's pull up the, get rid of this calendar, or this calculator here, kind of in the way. There we go. So let's take a look at this selfie. If I go ahead and zoom in here, look at the details, particularly my hair, I would say that looks pretty good. Depth of field isn't the best. Now, the background behind me isn't all too far, but on other phones, you will start to see a little bit of bokeh, particularly here with the wood in the back. I don't see that here yet. So just based on my first impressions, looking at this selfie, I would say it is not the best selfie camera I've seen, not on the level of, say, the S25 Ultra, but definitely a huge step up compared to previous years when we had that underscreen selfie camera, which added sort of a bit of a foggy or hazy almost look to the camera. The technology just wasn't ready yet, and I think that's why Samsung admittedly took a step backward, going back to a more traditional underscreen camera, and I think that paid off, and I'm glad they made that decision. Let's take a look at the back camera here as well. Let me get a picture here of my setup here. All right, so I've just taken a couple of pictures around the studio here around me. This is all very preliminary, but I do want to give you my first impressions here and thoughts on this camera. So here we have the main rear camera. Let's take a look at the quality. Looks pretty good, very sharp. I think there's very minimal noise if I look at the darker areas of the frame, like say here by my tripod. Looks very clean. I think it's also done a good job with exposure, right? This is a pretty difficult scene actually, because I got a very bright table and a very dark backdrop. So in that sense, it is a good camera test. I think it's done pretty well. Looking at a few other examples, here we have the ultra-wide lens. Now, something to always look out for in the ultra-wide lens would be the outer edges, where sometimes we do get a bit of warping. But based on my impressions here, we get very minimal. I do see some. This light, for example, you can see it's not as round as it should be. This is a round light. You can see the shape is a little bit off. Same with the TV. You get a little bit of that, but not bad at all. I would say the detail is pretty sharp. I can still read the text there. Let's go over to the next page here. Oh yeah, this is a quick little video. So let's see how good the autofocus is going through the phone. Back to the bright TV. Zooming in here, adjusting between the lenses. Of course, not as smooth as it's going to be on iPhone, but still quite a good job overall. I think it did a great job at retaining the color, so it didn't really change much when switching between the lenses, something I also found on the S25 Ultra. So I'd say video here looks pretty good, and this is of course mainly using that 200 megapixel main sensor that we also get on the Ultra, so I would expect that. And then lastly here we have, let's see, oh, we got one more shot here of a product, and let's look at that bokeh in the background. See, that's what I was talking about, where you get that nice shallow depth of field in the back. Looks really good. I think it's done a good job here at focusing on the lenses. You can even see little details, little specks of dust around. Speaking of which, here we have a super close-up, bit of a macro shot here. I think it looks pretty good. Very sharp. Again, nice shallow depth of field, good detail. So all in all, I can definitely tell that the camera has been greatly improved on the Fold 7, and it no longer feels as big of a compromise as it did previously, which always felt like a bit of a letdown because you're paying so much for that folding phone. You want to have the best-in-class camera, and while this, again, won't be exactly at the level of the Ultra, particularly with the macro or with the telephoto and ultra-wide lenses, that main lens, which really does matter most, is such a big upgrade. And again, you get that better selfie camera, at least on the inner display, thanks to no longer being an under-screen camera. So all in all, as you can see from these brief tests, the camera is a big upgrade on the Fold 7. Now, what I think is really cool is despite the much thinner design of the Fold 7, it still has the same size battery as last year. And this is of course accomplished because the actual phone itself is a little bit bigger, right? If you look at the outer display, it's going to be taller and wider, and that does allow Samsung to have the same size battery inside, even with the phone being so slim. So very interested to see how the battery is going to perform over time throughout a day of heavy and mixed use. But of course, be sure to stay tuned for my full review video coming very soon, and I'll give you all the details. Right, and in terms of performance and operating system, the Fold 7 gets the latest Snapdragon 8 Elite chip, just like the S25 Ultra, something that I definitely expected on this flagship phone, and I think is also going to be needed on a phone which is so great for multitasking. Now, it will also come with a brand new version of One UI, the latest One UI8, and this will come with new AI features, like for example, being able to share your screen with Gemini AI, so we can sort of get the context of what's on your screen when you're talking to it, and you also get many small but useful quality of life improvements that I look forward to testing further. Now, I want to quickly talk about the hinge as well, because something I definitely noticed from the Fold 7 compared to previous folds is that the hinge is a little bit stiffer. Now, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but when you open the phone, you have to use a little bit more force, but especially when closing the phone. It definitely requires a little bit more force. Now, one thing I will say is I do see people sometimes apply pressure to the center of the screen to close the phone. This I wouldn't do. Instead, I'd rest your thumb on the sort of mid to lower bezel of the display, and then you can gently push in and close your phone. Again, something you do want to do gently. Don't force it closed too quickly or shut it too fast, because like I said before, on all of these folding phones, really any folding phone, the hinge will be its weakest point. So you want to make sure to still use it with care. But I'm very interested to see how the durability of the Fold 7 is going to fare compared to, say, the Fold 6 and previous versions as well. As every year, Samsung promises to make improvements, and I do believe that is accurate. But of course, real-world use is going to be different. So I'm very curious to see how it will hold up. But again, I'm just so impressed by how super thin this phone is. I really can't put into words, and I hope it's translated properly through camera, how big of a difference this actually makes. I know it's typical to say that a phone is going to be slightly thinner, but on this phone in particular, and in this form factor in particular, it really makes a huge difference. So I'm really excited to start using and testing this Fold 7 more thoroughly. I hope I've given you some good impressions throughout this video to give you an idea of what my experience with the Fold 7 has been like and my first impressions. But of course, you do want to make sure to subscribe to not miss my full review, in which I'll answer key questions like, for example, is it worth paying the extra and getting the brand new Fold 7, or is it worth saving and getting the discounted Fold 6, which you can now find for a lot less money on the market as well. Now, chances are, I think I'm going to lean towards the Fold 7 phone because like you've seen throughout this video, it really is a massive upgrade over any Fold that came before it. And of course, another thing that I want to talk about is going to be, is it worth the price? Like, all these new features are really great, but at the end of the day, it's still a $2,000 phone. And while yes, you can argue that it's two devices in one, right? Like a tablet and a smartphone, $2,000 is still a lot of money. So the bar is going to be set high. But so far, based on my impressions, it seems to stack up quite well. But I'll leave my final thoughts for my review, so be sure to subscribe to not miss that. Thank you so much for watching this unboxing video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you thought of this video. I know typically in unboxings, I just focus more on the unboxing and leave all of my thoughts for the review. Where on this video, I kind of wanted to get the device set up and give you my first impressions. So if that is something you enjoyed, please let me know in the comments. And without further ado, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and take care.